All right. Thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm really excited about our conversation today. I'm excited about today's topic. Um, we're gonna be talking about the gem and mineral industry. We're gonna be talking specifically about um, mining rough. And my goal today, and Manny's goal, who's also here with us, is to talk to you a little bit about this process. We're going to talk to you about what goes on in this process. Our focus today obviously is going to be on diamonds, but what I want to make sure that we discuss is the ways buying rough is so different, the culture around it, um, and why it's important for a company like Foresight Holdings to help you with this process if you're thinking of buying rough. I've been in the industry for a little while. If you've been in the industry for a little while, this information is probably not new to you. However, it always surprises me how many people who've been in the industry for quite some time are not familiar with this information. And so if you're new to this space, I hope that you'll find this information insightful and educational, which I think you will. I know that there are a lot of folks that come into this industry, maybe not as jewelers, but maybe as attorneys or CPAs, and they really want to get a sense of what's going on in this space and what it's all about. And so that's what this call is all about today. So we'll be talking a little bit about the industry. We'll be talking about mining rough. We'll be talking about how to get diamonds at the lowest price you can find on earth. But before we get into that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Michael, Michael Tucker, and um, I'm super excited to be with you because I get to tell you a little bit about my journey in this industry, which has only been about 4 years old, 4 years long rather. And I have the privilege of also talking with you about how my company had the honor to be able to contract one of only 3 certified field gemologists in the world right now. And so I'm going to give him a chance to introduce himself real quick. Manny, you want to say hello to everybody?
Everybody.
Right. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, and so with that in mind, I mean, Manny has been in this field for over 30 years. He knows it inside and out. I learned a great deal from him about this work, and so I'm excited to share this with you today. Um, but maybe I'll just throw a little bit of, we'll start with a little bit of a history. First of all, I'm based here in Tucson, Arizona, which is home of the world's largest gem and mineral show. And we'll get back to that in a second, which because it completely connects to how Manny and I met. I'm a proud Air Force veteran who started out his career in the Air Force as a young officer, specifically in the area of acquisitions, which meant that my job was to buy very big, very complex, and very expensive things for the U.S. government. Um, uh, I sit on the other side of that now in a number of different ways, but that's for another conversation. But little did I know at that time that career would be preparing me for not only the world of gems and minerals, but some of the other things that I've done in my career. And so since completing my time in the Air Force, I've run a marketing company for 8 years. For the last 9 years, I've coached senior leaders and teams with Fortune 500 companies and government agencies. And I was formally introduced to the world of gem and minerals back in 2020 when I met Manny through a mutual friend. And what was funny about that experience was our mutual friend was supposed to have him stay over at his home during the time of the gym show, and he didn't have space, or he was going out of town, or whatever it was. And so I had the honor of hosting Manny in my home, and that really started it all. Prior to meeting him, I had the chance to go to the gym show and buy gifts for family members and that type of thing prior, but it wasn't really until after I met him and I started to see the gym show and started to see the business of the world of gem and minerals in a very, very different way. And so I've learned a lot from him, and it's really excited to have him exciting to have him here today. So that being said, I want to just share with you a couple of pictures. This was from our. I'm gonna do my best to share my screen with you here. Let's see. This is at my home, where my home here in Tucson, where we were meeting with folks and they were looking at gems and minerals and doing business right at the kitchen table. My wife took this picture when she walked in and saw what was going on. She had no idea what was going on. And I later explained to her that it was totally legal and ethical what we were doing. And then I have another picture I want to share with you. Because what I will tell you is that this whole adventure started out as just a bunch of fun, and it's turned into something that is significant and meaningful and helpful. This is another picture of Manny and I, and a gentleman, you may know him if you're in the gem and mineral industry, by the name of Justin Prim. Justin Prim is one of the most vocal authorities in the world around diamond cutting, not just diamond cutting, but all of a number of just colored stones as well. And so we had a chance to hang out with him. And so that was a really cool thing to do. So I'm going to stop with the pictures, and we're going to get into what we came to this conversation for today. And that is to talk a little bit about what it means to buy rough. And Manny, maybe we'll just kind of start with you. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you got into this industry, about your GIA certifications, and the ways that you've helped clients, large and small, over the last 30 years or more.
Okay, so the my historical background with gems and minerals was started as a hobby prior to me enlisting into the Marine Corps at the age of 17. As I traveled around the world as an active duty Marine, when I had R&R and time off for other events while I was out of the United States, I would literally go out to the mine sites, go to the gem and mineral souks, shows, markets that existed in the country that I was in. I would meet with, stay with, have dinner with, go out to parties with gem brokers, jewelers, stone cutters, of all sorts, to include miners. When I was at the mines, I would live with the miners at the site. I would even work for the miners. So I did this up and through my entire 2-year career in the Marine Corps, and at every single country that I had ever been deployed to or even stationed at, to include Cuba. I lived in Cuba. I was stationed in Cuba for about a year. I did a lot of work with the local miners and jewelers out there. On my last deployment, and I understood that I was gonna get retired because of some injuries that I sustained while I was on active duty. I decided to complete my graduate gemologist degree that I had started years before. I think when I was 20, over male courses with the Gemological Institute of America. So I re-enrolled as a student after I finished some surgery, and re-enrolled as a graduate gemologist student. while I was studying as my graduate gemologist, I completed also my graduate pearls, which makes me a pearls expert and an accredited jewelry professional, which makes me an expert in the overall jewelry industry, the very far end of the market, what we call the market, the mine to market process. As a graduate gemologist, it's kind of like any other degree. It just kind of skims over all of the facets of the science that exists. I did meet with a gentleman. His name is Vincent Pardue. He is the inventor of field gemology. He, at the time, was working for the Gemological Institute of America and setting up their field gemology laboratory and library in Bangkok, Thailand. While I was a student, he came out and to meet with me at the Carlsbad headquarters of Gemological Institute of America. And he hired me right on the spot before my graduation to be a field gemologist for the Gemological Institute of America. So I contract hired as a field gemologist, and since that time period, I've been traveling the world, 4 different corporations, different private entities, different governments, and the Gemological Institute of America to recover rough, finished gems, fossils, minerals, and other artifacts of that sort. So that's it in a nutshell for my background as a gemologist. As Michael said, there's only 3 people that actually work in the industry as field gemologists. We are all well connected with each other. We are all very good friends with each other. We regularly help and assist the projects that the others are working on. You got any other questions or concerns
Sure.
about that? Just let me know, and I'll go over those with anybody that may or may not want to understand more about what graduate gemologist or accredited jewelry professional and a graduate pearls standard means.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. You know, I think in a nutshell, what you just communicated is that you know what you're doing. And there's only a handful of people in the world, not even so much of a handful, that really understand this space at this level. And I know that there are a number of changes happening in the world right now. And so before we dive into talking more about buying rough, maybe you could talk a little bit about what's going on in the world right now that's creating some additional cost for the gem and mineral industry.
That's actually a concern about my friend in the mining industry. In the geological world, we refer to it as mine to market, and I think I said that before. But everything that happens in between the mine and the market, the actual individual that buys something at K Jewelers or wherever it is that they end up purchasing it, the miners are the least rewarded and the most affected by the geopolitics existing all over the world. You know, obviously the military conflicts existing between different nations. So you've got border issues between different nations, and the entities that support or do not support those nations based on whatever their politics are at the time. You've still got the rice farmers and the miners in those countries that are still trying to make a living by either digging rocks out of the dirt or growing rice or whatever on the dirt. So we have to worry about, when it comes to military conflicts such as those international ones, we have to worry about not only getting into those countries and getting out of those countries, but getting in and around those countries and through friend and foe countries of those areas that we are transporting goods from, i.e., rough gems. So that's one of the easiest known concerns when it comes to the mine to market process. The other one is a civil conflict, something that just happens within the borders of that country, even if it's just regional. For instance, like what's happening in Burma. Burma is one of the greatest pillared gemstone mining countries. The geospatial capabilities there is just fantastic when it comes to mining gems. However, there are civil issues where you can't even travel inside of the country. You go from one side of literally one side of the freeway to the other side of the freeway. You're on a different side now. And your friends live on one side and your buyers live on the other side. It's literally, you're the guy that goes between those two enemies in that country. And the miners are the same way. You have miners that are growing bananas and coconuts on one side of the country. You got miners that are actually growing rice on the other side of the country. They're hating each other right now because of their political or religious outlook on whatever's going on, and you become their go-between. And traveling within a nation that's having a problem like that, where you cross a street, it's a problem. Everybody gets paid on trying to cross that street. Everybody gets paid on trying to go through that door. And it really does exist. That reality does exist on the ground. World banking issues. Whenever there's a conflict or somebody doesn't like somebody or somebody wants to change their funding process, world banking, you just don't say, well, here, take this credit card, or I'm going to write you a check for these goods and services. That doesn't work. There's some countries like Yemen where you can't even carry the US dollar. You'll get arrested, you'll get killed, you'll get whatever. Just think about something bad because you're carrying, a couple of grand in your pocket so that you can buy these rocks. And that came out of the mountains in the Yemen area, just because their banking industry has changed. They're no longer using the US dollar. Conflict diamonds. Everybody's heard about blood diamond, which is actually a Hollywood term referring to a thing called conflict diamond. Conflict diamonds, everybody wants to make sure that their diamonds are not conflict diamonds and that they're sustainable and ecologically and ethically mined. The definition of a conflict is completely different on one side of the world than it is on the other side of the world. The definition of what is sustainable or ethical mining practices is completely different from one neighborhood to another neighborhood. And there's one family that you say, hey, that's bad practice when it comes to growing your rice field. And that's a really bad practice for digging gold out of your rice field. And you can't have your children do that. And then there's other practices in the world where they say, my family grows rice. Our whole family, from my children to my great-grandfather, grows rice right here. And in the terms of farming, and you have to do field rotations, you still got to feed your family. You're not growing rice, so you're not making money. So how am I going to make money to feed my family? I'm going to mine my rice field. So their whole family goes out and mines their rice field. You can't tell that family they're ethically wrong because their 7-year-old that helped them grow rice is now helping them pull rubies out of their rice field. What's wrong? What's ethical? And there's got to be somebody in there that can explain that process when you're leaving that village and going to the next village or going to the airport and transporting it from one airport to another airport that's 12 hours away or 20 hours away. And that entire process, money changes hands and ideas change hands too. There's a Kimberley Association when you're worried about or concerned about ethically mined or sustainably mined diamonds. Kimberley Association is not a law. It is a business agreement with diamond miners that have a very commercial process and concept of the diamond industry. Kimberley process destroyed a lot of family mines. So a lot of the locals are not really happy with those mining companies that are practicing the Kimberley process because they're members of the Kimberley Association. However, anybody who has enough money can buy a Kimberley Association certificate for any of the diamonds that they have, because there's no definition that is legally managed in order to obtain a Kimberley document, a Kimberlite document, whatever you want to call the association's document. That you just have to have enough money to purchase that document, and then you're baptized with the authority from the Kimberley Association to transport and sell those diamonds anywhere you want, simply because you paid the Kimberley Association enough money.
Yeah.
And that's basically how crazy the geospatial things are, or geopolitics are, when it comes to the diamond industry.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Manny. I mean, there's so many different changes in the world, so many different conflicts going on right now. I mean, and then we have inflation. That's a whole other conversation that is definitely creating a challenge in terms of creating increased pricing in the industry. And I appreciate the additional context that you provided. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we dive into this presentation?
Really, it's the hardest thing in being a field gemologist. The hardest thing to do is to find someone who knows what they want and is able to understand that if they want it, there is a way to get it, but they have to understand they're going to affect a majority of people that they'll never meet in obtaining those products that they want. They've got to be ready and willing to be patient and understanding of all that goes into it.
Yeah, fantastic. And we're going to definitely hit on some more of that as we dive into this presentation. So let me just share my screen here. And as promised, we're going to talk a little bit about buying diamond rough at the best global prices. And if you notice here, this is a picture on the left of my screen, probably you're right, depending on how you're seeing it. And this is the rough. This is what it looks like. It doesn't look like, you know, that 5-carat stone you bought your wife for your engagement. This is what it looks like. And so I think it's important. I think it's important to have that as a context because how we typically think of diamonds when we have experienced them in a retail establishment is not what the process for the diamond starts out as, and it's definitely not what it looks like. Okay. And we'll talk more about that here in a bit. So our objectives here is really to just talk a little bit about who first and foremost might benefit from the information that we're going to share today. Next, to discuss stages of the mine to market continuum for diamonds. This is not just for diamonds, it's also for other gems and minerals. The process is the same. And then we're going to describe how buying rough pre-wholesale is very, very different from buying it at wholesale or retail, or how we mostly experience that process. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about Foresight Holdings and how we might be able to support you as a partner in this journey. So who might benefit from this information? Mine workers. I think it's important that mine workers understand this process. Manny spoke a little bit earlier about how these individuals are often trying to feed their family. And just by sharing a little bit about the process, it really gives them some context. If you're in the wholesale retail space, if you're a gem dealer, a broker, a buyer, this information will also be helpful for you. Like I said earlier, you would be surprised. I was definitely surprised about how many few people I met in the industry was completely unaware or just didn't understand the complexities of the rough acquisition process. And then finally here, if you're an attorney, if you're a CPA, if you're new to the profession of gems and minerals, this will be helpful for you as well, because it will give you some context of what's actually going on when you're thinking about helping your clients in their gem and mineral process from whatever professional service you are providing for them. So this is the mine to market continuum. And there are many steps along the way. And Manny, I'm going to let you talk about this for a little bit. And what's driving this whole process here?
So, as you notice, the I personally don't imagine when I try to explain this process it as a straight line. I imagine it more like a bell curve. And the more you get to the center of the bell curve, the least population you have that actually participate in the process that you happen to be at. So for the miners won't ever know what a gem cutter has to go through in order to cut the stones that come out of their mine. They'll never know. And 100% of the time, the first broker that the miners will meet, unless it's with somebody like me, they'll never know who the second or third broker is in between the wholesaler packaging the rough was just by some broker that doesn't even know who the miner is. It's really kind of a secret handshake association with these individuals that work in these steps. After you have the stones cut, some of the stones require treatments, whether they be heat treatments, chemical treatments, or treatments like that. Getting involved in the treat part of the mine to market process is almost an impossibility unless you're a family member. And they're very tight-lipped about what their capabilities are with what types of stones. Diamonds are treated on a huge basis, on a massive basis, and they're done through a commercial process. And based with those treated diamond, or with the result of the treated diamond, what they're trying to accomplish, you can't go to the same company and get the same process. And there's a broker on each end of that. That broker will take it to the treater, and then once the treater has it, the treater is going to sell it. The broker that brought it in doesn't sell it. It's a treatment company that sells it. And those treatment companies sell it to a broker who will take it to a jeweler or a collector or a museum, whomever it was that's interested in those types of treated gems. And then once the jeweler makes it, the jeweler, a huge jeweler, or a jeweler, they have their own brokers that'll deliver the product, because everybody's concerned about security for their products. Finally, to retail, where you'll see a big shiny glass case surrounded by really bright lights and somebody standing on the other side of the case smiling at you, ready to talk to you about anything. And the really insane thing is the majority of the people standing behind those cases don't have any idea what it took for those gems and even those pieces of jewelry to get into that case. I've had instances all over the world. One I like to tell people about, when I took somebody into Saks Fifth Avenue in downtown Hanoi in Vietnam. I said, "Hey, let's go into Saks Fifth Avenue and look at their jewelry." We were in Vietnam to mine gems, and I took her up there, and she was a gemological student. And I said, "Pick what you like," and she picked out a couple of things, and I said, "Look what they're marked as." They were marked as moonstones. They weren't moonstones. They were sapphire that had the same quality as a moonstone. But because of the way the sapphire was treated, Saks Fifth Avenue jeweler at that store didn't know how to identify that particular sapphire from a moonstone, which you would think is crazy. But they were charging moonstone prices for a sapphire. That's a great deal for me because I know the difference, and I know that they, if I was interested in buying something out of a shelf, I would say that's a great deal, because that's a huge markdown from purchasing a sapphire to purchasing a moonstone. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that story. I mean, just walking through this whole process. And one of the things you talked about is you talked about these different brokers along the way, and every single time that that gem changes hand from one broker to another, the price goes up.
that is absolutely correct.
Yeah, exactly. Which takes us to our next point here, which is really about the difference in buying diamonds, buying the rough pre-wholesale versus wholesale, or at any other point in the process. When I look at this entire continuum, this mining market continuum, I break it up into two phases. I mean, I suppose you could come up with other phases as well, but the primary phases for me are the point at which the rough comes out of the mine, and then everything else after that. And so, and when you look at pricing for these diamonds or the gems and minerals, they're always going to be cheapest coming out of the mine. And then everything else gets more expensive because you have, all of the brokers along the way, and then just the process itself. But what I'd like to talk about with you here, Manny, is just some of the, I guess you could say, the mindset and the cultural differences between the folks in phase one that are associated with the mine, and then phase two, which is pretty much everyone else after that point. And maybe we could just start by talking about, you mentioned this a little bit earlier. You talked about, handshakes and you alluded to trusted relationships. Do you want to say a little bit more about that?
Exactly. The miners, for the greater part of the gems, minerals, and other things that you see that come out of the ground, the miners are not professionals. They do mining because it's another way to earn money that they can't earn during other seasons. There's literally mining seasons across the planet. And if you don't follow the miners, if you don't know who the families are that are mining their property, you don't know when they're mining. You can't mine during the wet season anywhere because your mine will fill with water, and you'll just be trying to fight Mother Nature, and it doesn't work. Another mindset for miners, remember, majority of them are farmers or some individual that is not a non-professional or uneducated in the standards of the Western world. Their concept of sustainability, ecological sustainment, or ethics is not in any way, shape, or form anything you would think, or anything your neighbor's going to think, or anything somebody on the other side of the planet's going to think. It's all a different mindset. So when somebody tells you, "Oh, sourced," And whose definition said that? Because I'll tell you right now, there's no miner in the world that's going to tell you that's ethically sourced. And I can give you a certificate that costs you $200 and it'll say it's ethically sourced, because I know the definition based on the country that is asking for that certificate. And then when you get into phase two, it's a completely different world, because it's based on nothing but contracts and business agreements. And it's all about pushing that product to the retailer. That's 100% what it's developed and designed, and the desire of every single individual that's involved in that process after that. I myself I have executed every single process that you can imagine in the mine to market process. I've done everything. I've designed jewelry, I've made jewelry, I've cut the stones. There's things about different steps along the phase two that I don't enjoy, and there's things along the phase two that I do enjoy. But I'll tell you right now, as far as when it comes to phase one, working in the mine with the miners, that's where it's at for me. That's where I need to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that, because I mean, really, you're really talking about people and their livelihoods, and that really just takes us to our next point here, which is in phase one, there's a focus on families, and they're looking for survival. They're looking for that next meal. Over on the phase two side, again, you talked about this. It's about business professionals. It's about investors. It's about profit, which brings me to the next thing that makes phase one so unique, and I would love for you to speak about this, which is cash today. That's a big thing in phase one. Phase two, there's a lot of focus on banking instruments and banking institutions and SWIFT codes and these kinds of things. But when it comes to families looking for survival, could you talk a little bit about the important cash today plays in this process, and how that influences what one can who's looking to acquire these gems can do if they have cash on hand?
But very simply, let's just look at what I did in the summer of 2023. From June through July, I was in Cambodia. I was mining with miners. I was mining with miners that have children that are named after me. I've got relationships with these families that have been mining in these areas since the 40s, since Pol Pot was in charge, and the killing fields were an active and real thing. So I have these relationships with these people, and I know what their conditions are. I know what their livelihood is all about. I understand their concerns. I understand what they celebrate. And I come to visit last June the mines like I normally do, and my best friend there, he's my number one guy that he and I communicate traditionally, and he tells me he's sick and he's sore and he can't mine, and he's worried about how he's going to feed his family this next year. And the rainy season, is not as wet as it should be, and he has a concern about his farms. So what do? I say, I'm going to be your miner. I mined in his mine. And even though I was doing the mining, because I was doing the mining and I was at the mine, and the brokers were seeing me, the brokers that basically hang out around the mines during the mining process, they saw that I was doing the work, so they didn't know what was going on. Why was I mining in this family's mines? So they didn't approach me for any purchasing of the gems. So this whole month while I was working for this family, they're not able to sell anything. where normally the other miners around me are selling things to the brokers on a daily basis, which is how they survive. Because this family knows me and I've worked with them over the last 15 years and so, they know that I show up with money, and they know that I'm going to purchase items because I go there for a reason. I go there because clients say that they need certain rough from certain regions, and this mine happens to have that type of rough that these people are looking for. So I'm allowed to be treated and act like a family member at these mines because of my relationship, and because they know in the end, I'm going to purchase their products that they haven't been able to sell over the last 3 days because they haven't been around. And the other thing is the other miners, because I've been working there for so long, they know me just as well. They hold back on the good products that they're pulling out of the mine because they know at the end of my 30 days that I'm working there, I'm going to be buying stuff from them too. And it's at a family price. It's not at what they're going to be selling to these brokers. So the reality of my relationships is the financial asset.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I go prepared with the money, and they already know that I'm going to show up, and I'm showing up there because I need to buy stuff for people that I know or people that hire me to go out and source these minerals and such.
Yeah, you know, I remember you and I were talking a little bit about how having cash on hand can actually increase the amount of gems you walk away with for a particular price. Could you talk a little bit about that, Manny?
Yes. For instance, I remember one night I walked into your house and I had a 20-pound bag of garnet from Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
It's perfectly fine garnet. It was a nice red garnet that everybody wants. I had some rhodolite garnet, which is the purples. Anyways, I had these huge amounts of garnet. And the reason why I had these large amounts of gems is because just like in Cambodia, in Nigeria, when I show up and I start working at these mines, these other miners around me know who I am. They talk about me when I'm not there. They send me pictures on Facebook when I'm not there so that I can celebrate with what they're celebrating. They hold back on the sales that they're selling to these brokers that are rummaging around the mine areas. They'll hold these products back. And when I go give the money over to these miners and these families to purchase the items that I went there originally for my clients, my contracted clients, they'll gift me so much product. I bring it back and my clients can't take it. There's not a capability for my clients to maintain that capability. It's too much product. So what do? I hold on to it and I sell it to somebody else that wants it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really the power of relationship, and it's also the power of having cash on hand. You know, you talked about some different regions of the world, Manny, and this process, the mining process can be quite dangerous. It occurs in some very austere locations. Whereas in phase two, you're dealing with, you know, maybe a guy in a, you know, with some white gloves on and in a nice air conditioned environment. Could you talk a little bit about some of the dangers that you've experienced in these places?
I was in Mozambique and we were running a ruby mine out of there. The largest ruby mine in the world is in Mozambique. So we were a competitor with that company at the time that I was opening up this mine. And because we were a competitor, that company would go to the local law enforcement and entice them to question us more often and a little bit more sternly throughout our daily process. So we'd be driving down the road. We'd get pulled over more likely than anybody else would, because everybody knows who we are. A bunch of Westerners driving around in these trucks, carrying a bunch of stuff in the back of the trucks. So they pull us over and they want to know, they want to inspect, they want to slow us down, they want to basically get paid for doing what they're doing. You know, they call it a motivation. Where is my motivation? I hear that a lot in different countries, because that's a very common English phrase for them to try and ask me for money. Where is my motivation? My motivation to let you on your own way, my motivation to let you continue doing whatever it is that you're doing. So we have to deal with that. And so that means we've got to carry cash directly. If we don't, they're going to take something of us, or they're going to take one of us. They're going to put us in jail. And then we're going to end up having to go get cash anyway, so get our guy out of jail. Yeah, I mean, in that situation, it wasn't that difficult. I ended up understanding the need behind the need with those security individuals or those law enforcement individuals, and I ended up just getting pizzas. And literally, every time I drive somewhere, I drove around with a stack of pizzas, and when they pull me over, I would just hand them a stack of pizza, and then they would just let me go on my way. And it doesn't have to make sense. It just that's the way things are.
Yeah, it's really important to understand the regions and how things are operating in a region, and how people are moving and what their motivations are. And you know, it's interesting, and I appreciate the stories that you're sharing, and I know that those stories are some of the more sanitized ones, so that really speak to the danger of those areas. Let's kind of shift direction here a little bit and talk about how we measure in phase one coming out of the mine, and talk about how we measure in phase two.
It's all based on the location, the product, the family, the season, the companies that are around, and the brokers. It's basically everything. You can't really come up with a diagram that's going to say, yeah, here's how this is going to work, because you don't know. Once you get out of phase, I'm talking about phase one. Once you get out of phase one and you're into phase two, everything becomes much more sterile. Just like you said, it's somebody wearing white gloves with inside of a air-conditioned facility, and everybody's happy and smiling, and everybody just went to lunch and they came back from lunch. So there you're able to measure product reality. And the other strange thing about phase two is the waste. When you're going through each step in phase two, there are products that are literally thrown away and nobody uses it. It turns into junk, garbage. It becomes landfill, goes back into the ground. Because every step of the way, somebody has an idea what it is supposed to be doing or what it is that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And so in order to put a leveler on that or a scale on that, you have to be very specific as to which phase, which company, which country, where did the product come from, where didn't it come from, what season did it come out of, and all so forth and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's interesting is, you know, that we had that initial picture there of that rough, that diamond rough, and in phase one, you're looking at grams. You're not looking at carats. It doesn't even look like a carat. You're not going to see a carat in phase one, most likely. And so I think that's important to think about, especially as we think about putting contracts and agreements together for X number of carats. I think it's important that folks understand that very early on in this process, you're looking at grams and you're not looking at carats. Another thing that I think is important, you and I were talking about this the other day, is just the difference in how this product is sold, diamonds in particular. In phase one, you can make lot purchases. In phase two, if you're here in the US, you're buying an individual diamond. And those prices are astronomical compared to the lot purchases in a number of cases. Now, that being said, you may be able to purchase, you can purchase lots in different countries, but not here in the US. And then next, and this is really where I think it's important to talk about, is this price volatility. I think we lost Manny there for a moment.
Yeah, I lost it again.
All right. You're back now, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I paused the video, so
Okay.
yeah, when you turn on your camera, I'll get. What's that?
Just trying to catch up.
What happened?
It's welcome to Tennessee.
I know, man, your internet's not that great. Oh my God. Okay, there you go. All right, yep. So I'm gonna bring this back up and share screen. Okay, let me just push. Okay. I think I can continue recording here. Oh, maybe I never stopped the recording. All right. Okay. All right. So that'll be interesting to work out. But I want to talk about price volatility. Yeah, I want to talk about price volatility really quick in phase one versus phase two. I know a lot of times in phase two, those who are buying product directly from the mine, they're wanting consistent pricing. They want pricing over the years. Could you talk a little bit about how pricing works in phase one, Manny, and what makes it so volatile?
And phase one is volatile based on the season and how well they did on that season. It's just like farming. Is it a dry season? Is it a wet season? Did the father of the family break his leg? Did they have to get new animals? Did somebody reach the age of going to school? And the majority of these countries, they have to pay for the children to go to school and so forth and so on. So you can create, me being the you, when I'm working with these miners, we, as the miner and myself, we decide what the price is, because the miner knows I'm going to pay him right now, today, what we agreed upon. And we don't talk about price until it's the day for me to put all of these rocks in a bag and walk away from the mine. So I understand how that family has done throughout that year that I've been gone. I understand who's sick, who died, whose heart broke down, which child was able to live past 3, which child is going to go to school. So that's really how things are priced in phase one. We're literally sitting, drinking whatever we're drinking and eating wherever we're eating, and we make the decision as to how much something. You get into phase two, there's nowhere in the world that you're going to find a menu that's going to tell you how much rough is worth anywhere. You can Google rough anything, rough tourmaline, rough diamond, rough zircons, and you'll find individual pieces that are for sale. But that's not how much rough is worth. That's how much that individual company or individual proprietor is selling that piece for. And it has nothing to do with what happened during phase one. It has everything to do with what happened after it left the mine. Because 99% of all of those proprietors don't even know the mine that it came from, don't know the broker that bought it from the mine, don't know what laboratory it may or may not have gone to in order to be tested, and which broker they sold it to in order. There is so much involved in the pricing reality that rough it's not cost effective for any company, and it's not wise for any company out there to tell somebody how much their rough is going to be worth tomorrow or an hour from now.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like in this phase one, pricing has less to do with global markets and more to do with people's individual economies, you know, the farmers or the miners and what they're experiencing and what they're going through at that time. And that's how the price is determined in phase one.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then the last area here is shipping and customs. This is a reality in both phases. Could you talk a little bit about shipping and customs and some of the challenges associated with that and the price and that's often associated with those services?
Okay, so let's just take Madagascar, for instance. Madagascar is a wonderful place to go mining for almost any type of mineral in the world. It's a cornucopia of rocks. So, as an outsider, somebody that does not maintain a passport for the country of Madagascar, when I show up, everybody and their grandmother knows that I showed up. And when I go to a mine and I work there for a month, everybody and their grandmother finds out that I'm that guy that's working there for a month and I'm collecting gems. It doesn't get past anybody that I'm working there. And it doesn't get past anybody why I'm there to begin with. And it doesn't get past anybody that I brought money to buy these products to bring them out of Madagascar. So Madagascar has a um, a directorate of mines and measures in their government. And it's broken down into regions. So the regional representative of the mine and measures directorate will come and visit me while I'm at the mine, close to my 30-day departure. And they'll say, when are we going to have our meeting? Because I need to inspect the products that you're going to be taking out. What that tells me is I have to have everything out and ready, packaged the way me personally, I'm gonna carry it out of the country. Number one thing, I have to pay that representative a certain amount of money. Number two, I have to pay for the certificate that that representative is going to issue me so I can carry it out of the country. Because in Madagascar, for rough, it's required to have a certificate. So that's my meeting. I leave the mine, I go to the airport. I've got this bag of rough with me. Normally I'm put it in a sea bag, and that's how I transport it because there's so much of it. I get to the airport. I have to show my certificate, and then sometimes based on who it is, they want to see the rough. I don't know why they want to see it. They just look at it. They literally, sometimes they make me pull it all out, put it on a table. Sometimes they just pull out one bag. Sometimes they just open the bag and look inside. But I have to show my certificate. So after they've inspected my certificate and my products, I have to pay them so that they allow me to put my bag on the airplane. Has nothing to do with baggage costs because I'm not paying the airlines. I already paid the airlines for my seat and for my luggage. Now I'm paying an airport official to let me leave the airport with the baggage that I brought to the airport. So I get it in the airport. I get it out of the airport and onto the airplane. Now I'm sitting in the airplane. I'm flying through all these different countries. Normally I don't get talked to or asked any questions while I'm traveling from my mining location to my place of delivery. But once I get to my place of delivery, let's just say it's the United States of America, I'm asked where I was, how long I've been gone. Sometimes it's inspected, sometimes it's not, based on my number, because our Border Patrol at the airport inspects based on numbers of people coming through, not who you are. Unless, of course, I'm a known felon or something like that, then I'm obviously going to be stopped. But I'm not. I'm a retired Marine, and I have a pretty high level of classified clearance. So getting it into the United States is not a difficult process. Getting it out of the country of Madagascar is somewhat of a difficult process compared to others. We're in Bangkok, Thailand, coming out of Cambodia, coming out of Burma or something like that, nobody cares what I'm carrying. There's nobody to come and visit me at the mine, the government. If they do inspect my bag, which is unlikely most of the time in one of those three countries, I just have to pay them to be happy and allow me to transport out of that country. Now, looking at it on the other side, a commercial transport from any country at all, doesn't matter which country, doesn't matter what service, whether it be Brinks, DHL, FedEx, the U.S. Postal Service, just name any type of a logistics company that transports goods. The individual broker that is going to manage the process of bringing your products from wherever they're coming from and packaging them, first you're going to pay that individual just for doing that. Then you're going to pay 2 to 3 times as much as the packaging costs you. And then when the individual finally gets to whichever company it is that you've agreed upon to use, or whichever company it is that that individual can use, out of Pakistan, it's the Pakistani postal service that does it. However, they go through DHL once it gets to the airport. So you're going to pay for that postal service or that packaging service to take it to the airport. Once it gets to the airport, now you're going to pay airport fees based on weight and size and shape of your package. And all of that is going to be insured by those individual companies that are touching your package along the way. So if the airport picks it up, that means the insurance company that the airport works with is going to require money for handling of that package. You're paying for that. The airlines, whichever airlines happens to be, not only is going to charge you a cargo fee, but they're also going to charge you insurance, because you're not allowed to transport products like gems and minerals, whether they be rough or finished products, without an insurance on it, so that someone is able to say, you know, you're the one that did it, or you're the one that did it, and then their insurance, you complain to their insurance and everybody gets paid along the way because you ended up not getting what you ordered. This has happened out of South Africa. This has happened out of Australia. It's you're not always guaranteed. I have had large packages come from even Australia, and there were products missing. There were packages that were opened up, and some things were removed. Luckily, though, I was not the one responsible for sending those packages. The actual mining company was responsible for that. The mining company had to pay for all of that packaging and delivery service to get to me in the United States. And once it got to me, I was the one that reported that there were some products missing. I showed photographs and I made up statements and so forth, because I understood already that the mining company's insurance program would have to deal with whomever it was that they worked with as a logistics company. Eventually, the mining company did get paid for their lost products. Not everything was missing, just some of those things, but it was very noticeable. And it just became a financial fiasco for them, and time was lost and products were lost. And so they did not ever end up getting what it was that they initially thought that they would have paid for it, simply because they went through commercial logistics processing. They didn't have that person in charge transporting it all the way through.
Yeah. Wow. You know, it's interesting because when I think when we think about transport here in the U.S., we think about the Postal Service, and while it does have some issues, it's usually pretty consistent. Here, what I'm hearing from you is that you're physically moving product in phase 1, and ideally you're physically moving product in phase 2 individually, just because it's cheaper. That's what I'm hearing you say. And there are,
Yes.
I'm sorry?
I charge less.
Yeah, okay, okay. Awesome. Excellent. Yeah, well, Manny, I appreciate you sharing so much here. I'm gonna go to the next slide and just shift gears here and just talk a little bit about the value of Foresight Holdings as a partner. For those who are looking to purchase rough, I can tell you that having you on our team, Manny, is priceless. It's absolutely priceless. I mean, in a nutshell, Foresight Holdings, we're a boutique gem and mineral outsourcing solution. So through us, we're able to employ Manny's services on behalf of our clients, as well as we'll talk about, we didn't get into this as much, but the entire network of relationships that you've built abroad. I guess we did talk about that a lot, but in addition to that, there's a whole other logistics element as well. So as a boutique gem and mineral outsourcing solution, you get to work with someone like myself who's you know, more the shirt and jacket kind of guy, innovative, creative entrepreneur. And then Manny is very much the certified field gemologist. He's in the dirt, he's in the mud, he's working with the miners, he's sleeping under trees to get you the product that you need and to ensure that it's the highest and best quality. There is an extensive mine to market industry knowledge available here. You just had an opportunity to experience that. And then just so we're clear, all of our purchases are phase one purchases, right? So when they're phase one acquisitions. And so when you acquire them, you know that they're phase one acquisitions. You're purchasing from a phase one source, which is going to significantly reduce the cost of any rough that you purchase. And then finally, both of us are veterans. That's something that bonded us initially. We're very much focused on humanity. I know, Manny, you're doing some incredible work with just making sure that there's some very dark things in the world. We'll just leave it at that. And you've been very instrumental at pushing back some of those dark things as they relate to children. And the work that I've been doing here on a volunteer basis has to do with families and helping families stay strong and providing coaching and other supports for those families. So that's the value that we bring as a team. And I'll stop sharing here. And so if you are looking to acquire rough, I honestly don't know where you're going to go in the world to get this level of understanding, expertise, care, intentionality, and the level of just understanding and pricing that we can deliver. And so if you are interested, definitely be in contact with us. We'll get a term sheet going and we'll start the process. So with that, is there anything else you'd like to say before we close out, Manny?
I'm living the dream, and everybody's invited.
That's fantastic. You're always living the dream. I've heard you say that every single day for the last 4 years that I've had a chance to talk with you. So we're definitely living the dream because you're a part of it. And so I thank you. If you're interested in working with us, definitely reach out and we'll see you next time.